Well, thank you all so much for being here today. I have the wonderful opportunity to travel the globe speaking about neurodiversity. And every April, we celebrate Autism Acceptance Month, as in Jersey say, Public Library Autism Alliance Month. And we really try to do the most we can for the over 70 million worldwide who have some form of autism diagnosis. So this is a little bit about me. This is simply just an interactive activity we like to start off with every presentation, because often we say that it takes a village. And it's really important that we as a society know that autism has no look. There are so many people in our community who you would never know that they actually had a disability. So it's really important that we promote kindness in our society. And during April is our busiest month. We have 27 speaking engagements this month, our highest of any year. And we get the opportunity to not only discuss autism spectrum disorders, but my own personal journey as somebody who grew up with autism. So to kick off today's presentation, I wanted to share a quick video with all of you so you can get a little glimpse into my journey on the autism spectrum. I hope you enjoy it.
Our next guest is an accomplished public speaker and activist who has devoted his life to helping others. Not bad for a guy who was completely nonverbal for the first few years of his life. But once Kerry Magro found his voice, he had a lot to say.
My parents have always told me I was special, so why am I special? And then later on, I realized that I'm even more special because I have autism.
Kerry Magro's childhood was marked with rough patches. He was completely nonverbal at age 2 and diagnosed with autism at age 4.
I just remember having difficulties trying to explain myself to the world around me.
When Kerry did speak, he struggled to express himself.
Most of my memories were simply just about that kid who wanted to communicate with the world around him, but didn't have the verbal means of actually doing that.
His mother, Suzanne, remembers watching her son have a hard time adjusting to the outside world.
He turned 2 and he was scared of everything. He was scared of the water, he was scared of the rain.
But as the years went on, Kerry slowly began to find his words.
When you can't communicate with the people you love the most in this world about even some of your basic needs, it gets really, really tough. So, but luckily, once I started talking, I never stopped talking.
Kerry went on to graduate high school, attend Seton Hall University, and then independent living. Today, Kerry is a professional speaker, activist, and mentor dedicated to educating people about autism. Wow. This is at some point today. Kerry is currently finishing up his doctorate in education while also writing a children's book about autism acceptance in addition to his public speaking. Good for him.
So this is just a little bit of my journey. I was diagnosed in 1992 when the numbers of autism were 1 in every 1,000 being diagnosed with autism. Autism today is a social and communication disorder that affects a wide range of people within our community. I'm so glad. We also have 3 people in the waiting room. I don't know, Ali, if you're moderating that as well. I just wanted to throw that out there now that I'm host, I can see that. Just in case you were in need of doing that. But for the past 10 years, I've had the opportunity to be a professionally certified speaker and having the opportunity to not only share my perspective of growing up with autism, but also being able to highlight the stories of many people within our community. Along the way, we've got an opportunity to work on several films to bring a realistic portrayal of autism to our entertainment industry. One of the big things that we're always advocating for.
Okay, all of those supplies are at Morgan.
And just for everyone at
home, to come back, and she'll be back soon. We're gonna have plenty of time.
Hold on.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Just in case we get a little background noise while we're going on in the presentation. But one of the big things we do is we highlight the disability community so much because we really need to see more representation, getting more disabled actors opportunities to audition for roles, in addition to having consultants to make sure that we're bringing a realistic portrayal. We had a film that came out recently from Sia called Music. I don't know if anyone had seen that film, but it got an 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. And one of the big reasons that a lot of people were really disliked that movie was because of the representation. They had Maddie Ziegler, who was a young woman who actually did a decent job of portraying the character, but there was no real research done in terms of finding a consultant or actually talking to autistic actors for that role. So we need to do a better job to make sure that when we talk about the word inclusion, we're actually having everyone's voices to the table in those conversations. Along the way, we've also had the opportunity to start a nonprofit organization where I provide life coaching, mentoring, and training for those with special needs as they're transitioning to adulthood, while also providing scholarships for those with autism to go to college. I already kind of mentioned this, but at the beginning, when I started doing this for the first time, people would come up to me and they would say, Kerry, you have autism? You don't look like you have autism. And today I am considered to have the quote unquote invisible disability. So the importance of understanding that, like this meme says, not all disabilities look like that, some look like this. You might encounter people in your lives who you may never know have any specific challenges on the surface, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't go through obstacles in their daily life. I mean, we have learned so much about this from the rise of prevalence of mental health issues as well, and the importance of having somebody to talk to. Next month is going to be focused on mental health awareness. So it's really important that we have these conversations. During this presentation, if any of you are interested in, feel free to tag us in the post, and we always appreciate feedback as well. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding of autism for those who are new to our autism community, autism has actually risen over 100% in the past decade in terms of prevalence. The numbers today are 1 in 54. Not only are autism is one of the fastest growing developmental disabilities, but all developmental disabilities are on the rise. And really what leading experts say is the reason for that is because of the fact that we're spreading so much more awareness about these disabilities that less individuals are falling through the cracks, and we're able to provide individuals with things such as early intervention services to help them live the best lives possible. In our autism society, unfortunately, we still have the popular image of autism focuses around boys. We see this in so many films today. So many people who don't have a personal connection of autism still see autism as the quote unquote Rain Man disorder. Rain Man being the 1988 film featuring Dustin Hoffman, which features a young man who's on the autism spectrum. We're now kind of going back to that in this show, The Good Doctor, which is currently on ABC, where we're seeing a lot of autistic characters being portrayed as savants, full-time employment, having relationships, but there are going to be people, like we're going to mention in the presentation today, who are going to need full-time care for themselves. So not only is there no look to autism, but we have to remember, if you met one individual with autism, you met just that one individual with autism. In addition to that, we're realizing that there is actually a very wide population of adults who are actually being diagnosed with autism in adulthood. While 1 in 54 are diagnosed with autism in the United States, actually 1 in 45 adults are diagnosed with autism, indicating that there are over 5.4 million adults who have autism in the United States today. Since 1970, April has been proclaimed World Autism Awareness Month. It started out being called National Autism Awareness Month. And later down the line, many self-advocates, such as myself, have been advocating to call it Autism Acceptance Month, because awareness is a great first step. But if we're not pivoting our conversations at some point towards acceptance, alliance, inclusion, understanding, and appreciation, we're really doing a disservice to our community. And in addition to that, 14 years ago today, the reason why I'm in a suit, I'm often more casual. Is this morning we spoke at a United Nations event on behalf of World Autism Awareness Day, which often happens on April 2nd. We had to push it back to April 6th this year. Having the opportunity to talk about the global impact of autism in our communities. These are just some of the books that I've worked on during my journey. One thing that I don't see enough of when I go out to speak across the globe is self-advocate representation. So I decided to start writing books based on my journey, writing my first book called Defining Autism from the Heart on self-advocacy. I assumed it would sell 50 copies when it came out in July of 2013, but within 3 days, it became an Amazon bestseller for special needs parenting. And it continued to give us a platform to discuss a wide range of topics impacting the autism community, including, in addition, dating, which is kind of one of the more sensitive topics that a lot of people really have not talked a lot about in our autism community, and some of the challenges that those with autism face when trying to find meaningful relationships and love on the autism spectrum. And then a book I got the opportunity to work with some of my esteemed colleagues. Dr. Temple Grandin is an autism advocate who rose to fame from her HBO film, which it's actually on HBO Max right now if you want to check it out for April, based on her life, just called Temple Grandin. And also Dr. Stephen Shore, another autism speaker who was diagnosed with autism at a very early age. My diagnosis, so back when I was diagnosed, autism was, there were 5 different classifications of autism. And I was diagnosed with a specific autism called PDD-NOS, which is kind of a middle tier autism. And today, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual has just lumped the autism diagnosis into a broad spectrum diagnosis called autism spectrum disorders. In addition to not saying my first word until I was 2.5 and not speaking complete sentences until I was 7, these were some of the laundry list of challenges that I dealt with. For everyone watching at home, one of the things we like to do with each one of our presentations is provide the PowerPoint slide notes. I'm an avid note taker, so I'm always trying to take down every single note. So we just make this accessible for you, just so you're not having to ask us to go back to a previous slide, and you can write down as many or as little notes as you like. So the link down here, if you just copy this link into your browser, or you scan the QR codes that will be popping up during this presentation, we'll be able to, if you click the link or scan the QR code, we'll be able to provide you the PowerPoint slide notes from today's presentation. But one of my biggest challenges, like the NBC Today Show video said, once I started talking, you couldn't get me to stop talking. And most of my challenges today, even to this day, because autism is a lifelong disorder, are sensory related. Sensory, we're talking about all 5 different senses, but the 2 biggest sensitivities that I had were in regards to bright lights and loud noises. I would often wear earbuds in most of my classrooms simply because of a hypersensitivity to any type of sound, regardless if it was any form of loud noises as well. In addition to that, wearing sunglasses in many of my classrooms because of fluorescent lights that many of our K through 12 schools have interfered with my ability to focus on my teachers. So in addition to that, in the Today Show video, I talked a little bit about the therapies I received. I received over 15 hours a week of occupational physical speech therapy and then integrated music and theater therapy to help build on some of my communication difficulties, in addition to one of my harder challenges, which is mind blindness. Some people with autism are unable to really put themselves in the shoes of other people. And theater dramatically helped increase my understanding by playing different characters and roles. And now today I get the opportunity to continue that work in the entertainment industry. What my parents said early on, if you are an educator here today, if you are simply knowing of somebody who's on the autism spectrum, one of the biggest educational things I could say is talk to that caregiver, talk to that self-advocate about ruling out as many associated medical and mental health conditions as humanly possible. Most individuals who have some disability also are going to have some other comorbidity, whether it's, for me, it was dysgraphia, which I didn't find out until I was 18 years old, which is a hand-wringing disorder. The majority of individuals who have some form of developmental disability will most likely have some form of dual diagnosis, whether it's ADD, ADHD, anxiety, depression, epilepsy, apraxia, ecophilia, the list goes on and on. Seizures are another big one, and the list again goes on and on. What my parents also did, which was really helpful, is they started looking at websites such as the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association. On their website, they actually have a list of state insurance mandates for all 50 states when it comes to autism spectrum disorders. So one of the great things about this is that they also have a wide range of services. If you know of anyone who has any speech delays, any sensory processing issues, and anyone who really has any form of processing challenges, whether it's a developmental disability or a communication challenge. In addition to that, if you're an educator on the line today, you might have heard of IDEA, obviously, the Individuals Disabilities Education Act, which really talks about the importance of things such as an individualized education plan to provide those individuals with services. So those were some of the things my parents did at the very start of my journey to help me. And today, now I've overcome many of my obstacles. And in addition to speaking at over 1,000 events in the past decade since I became a professionally certified speaker, one of the things which is kind of disheartening to me, and why I put in the title of my presentation, putting a spotlight on the spectrum, is that every single place I was going to speak, I was one of the only autistic adults speaking at most of those events. And I found that so unfortunate, because 1 in 5 Americans have a disability today, and there is not often a lot of self-advocate representation that are at these special events, at these educational conferences. And I decided to start a video series called Special Community, where every single place I go to speak now, I bring a tripod and a camera, and I sit down with local self-advocates and I ask them, what would you like the world to know about you? Not only in the hopes of breaking down barriers for those with disabilities, but also giving a positive platform for all these individuals to highlight their stories. We now today have over 200,000 Facebook followers, and we've been able to give several individuals viral opportunities to have their story told in our community. One of the first viral videos we ever got to post was with this 10-year-old boy named Liam, who simply wanted the world to know that sometimes because of having autism, it's hard to make connections and it's hard to make friendships. And this is what Liam wanted the world to know about his story.
So we're going to be talking to the camera, and we want to make you famous. So we literally want to make you probably the most famous person on the planet. How's this sound?
Okay.
No pressure.
Autism basically makes it hard to connect. It makes it hard to get that connection, to make friends. They feel like more loners than in groups. It's also a learning disability, and in some cases, it's hard. You can't speak in some cases. I met a kid called Tom. He has autism, but he can't speak in proper English. He needs an iPad.
So Liam, one thing I want you to know is that I was actually diagnosed with autism at an early age too. And I don't know if I've ever actually told you that, but I want you to know that I will always be here to be your friend if you need a friend, okay?
Yeah.
Because even though it may be hard at times to connect to other people, I feel like so many people with autism like us just want like what anyone else wants, to feel connected and to have a friend. So roll that friend in me, okay? Want to come this up?
Yeah.
you blow it up too. Oh, he blows it. Oh. Possibly.
I'm kind of tearing up. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's kind of emotional.
So this was the first time Liam ever was able to tell anyone outside his immediate family about his autism diagnosis. And then 30,000 views that night, there were people commenting, just telling Liam, you will find connections, you will find friendships one day. And that really helped nurture his self-advocacy. And we have realized that so many individuals often don't feel empowered by their diagnosis due to some of the ongoing challenges that those with disabilities can face. And we really want to do something to help them embrace who they are a little bit and understand that even though they may have challenges, they also have strengths in their lives. And now we use this opportunity, and now we've been able to provide over 150 self-advocate opportunities and also receive 501c3 nonprofit status. So we could actually receive donations. So hopefully we can make this video series sustainable so we can do this as a full-time job one day. But again, as I mentioned in the beginning, the importance of the spectrum cannot be highlighted enough. And what you might see in the autism community is you might see a lot of people who also have nonverbal challenges. About 1/3 of individuals in the United States are nonverbal, and some of them communicate via tap-to-talk devices, text-to-speech devices. And one of the individuals I wanted to highlight to show you the spectrum of autism is a young boy named Gossi, who I met when I was advocating in the Bahamas for therapy services for those with special needs. On an island of over 3,000 people in the Bahamas, you would be very surprised to know that only 3 therapists on the entire island are occupational therapists. And I found that so disheartening, especially when we talk about topics like how early intervention can help so many kids live a really good chance of an amazing quality of life. We need to do more. So I went to the Bahamas to meet these incredible kids, and I was really inspired by the young man I met. And I wanted to share a little bit about his story with all of you today.
Wave to the camera and say hi. It's a fun camera, isn't it? You're amazing. Okay, yeah. Awesome.
Obasi is 9.
Yeah.
And he is on the autism spectrum. Functionally non-verbal, but we do get words from time to time. Sentences actually from time to time, but very infrequently. One of my goals is that we find a way that he is comfortable communicating. Right now he is using a lot of tap to talk, on the iPad. But I really would like to see it develop a little bit more into not just asking for something, but communicating something. Like, I had a good day. It's just that I need to reach him where he is. And, he's an awesome kid if you get to know him.
It definitely seems like it. Is there anything else that you want people to know?
Your story, but also your son's story.
I think we need more awareness, and I think people just need to be a little bit more aware. When you see a child throwing a tantrum in a supermarket or screaming on an airplane, it's not that the child is acting out. It may just be that the child needs, the environment is different, they're having a hard time. There's a lot of judgment, and I really wish that people would just stop and just let go of the judgment and just try to understand. Because if you ask me, if we're in a supermarket and he has a moment, somebody came to me and said, is he okay? And I can explain, he's just, this is what is happening today. That's so much better than saying,
Exactly.
We often in the community talk about how bullying impacts so many kids today. I believe that bullying is one of the leading epidemics we currently have in the school systems today. Bullying impacts 1 in 5 students today, and those with disabilities are twice as likely to be bullied compared to their non-disabled peers. And often I think about the individuals like Basi who have been bullied in the past for being considered different. As you could see in the video, he does something called stimming. We were in that school that day. It was 90 degrees. There was no air conditioning because the school couldn't afford it. And he was trying to self-regulate himself by stimming, moving his hands back and forth to come back to a place of normalcy, which is actually something I did when I was Bossy's age. And it's really important that when we see somebody in a public place who might be having an issue, that we don't right away give an ugly stare. We don't necessarily think that they're being a brat, that they're having a tantrum. They could potentially be having a meltdown. So I think as a society, we need to be a little bit more accepting and understanding, especially of those like Bossy who might have more challenges than others. One of the things I recommend to educators who might be on, and anyone who's just simply wanting to learn a little bit more about how they communicate as an individual, even if you don't have a disability, is this website called the Communication Matrix, where you can actually learn a little bit more about how you communicate. It's not only for kids in K through 12, but it also looks at things such as pre-attentional behaviors, intentional behaviors, and also challenging behaviors as well. If you're more likely to look at nonverbal communication versus being more openly communicating and using words as well. So it's a really cool matrix and it's absolutely free to take advantage of. So finally, before we open it up to Q&A, I just wanted to share 10 quick things that helped me from my journey from nonverbal autism to today being a public speaker. The first one simply is that we need to do a better job of getting our kids ready for the transition to adulthood. Now, when I was a kid, I received no transitional services in school. As part of a IEP, every single individual with a disability should receive transitional services to prepare them for the next step, what's going to happen when they age out of school. And unfortunately today, a lot of schools still do the bare minimum when it comes to getting them ready for those transitions, whether it's getting them potential job opportunities, looking at things such as resume building while they're in high school, things such as post-secondary, how they would go about effectively actually getting good SAT and ACT scores. These are all things that can be part of a child's IEP to help them with that transition, regardless of any disability they have. In addition to that, role playing is really important. I can't tell you how many schools I go to speak in who don't have any social skills programs in their schools. And this is why I always encourage role playing, because for me, role playing was simply understanding a little bit of things such as what a friend does and what a bully does. Because when I was a kid, I didn't have my first real friend until I was 12. And it was because I befriended bullies. Because even though I received negative attention, it was some form of attention. So we need to do a better job of giving these kids an understanding of the potential situation they're going into before they're actually going into it to prepare them. Servant leadership, I continue to talk about we need to enlighten our kids of the impact that community service can have, not only on making them a much more well-rounded person, but also to help them understand the challenges and hardships that not only they may be going through, but the challenges and hardships that many people are going through, regardless if they have a disability. Learning from other self-advocates is truly important. I believe so many individuals with disabilities I meet are often discouraged by their disability, and they haven't found that whole acceptance realm that I have been able to accept with my autism diagnosis. And one of the best ways of actually having these individuals be able to embrace their diagnosis a little more is positive role models, success stories within our community. I was in a social skills class when I was 11, where we were playing disability celebrity bingo, that we were learning that Michael Jordan has ADD, Magic Johnson has ADHD, Leonardo DiCaprio has dyslexia. And I was like, all these individuals are special, just like me, and they're successful today. We need to highlight those stories to help these kids. In addition to that, peer mentoring is something that is not only for kids, but something we should be establishing more in our workplaces. We all at times need somebody to go to show us where we potentially could end up in the future. We need those role models in our communities. In addition to that, like I say, autism has no look. There's also no look when it comes to therapy and services as a whole that will work for an individual. It's simply establishing rapport with every single individual with a disability to understand what works best for them. But a therapy that I always advocate for is cognitive behavioral therapy, because with disabilities, there's also a very good chance of having some form of emotional or anxiety challenge as well, because of some of the lingering challenges that go along with a disability. So having cognitive behavioral therapy, which in a nutshell basically takes negative thoughts and tries to go into a positive perspective, can really help a lot of our loved ones. In addition to that self-reflection, I definitely recommend for those who are simply just wanting to understand how to build on their own short-term and long-term goals, is just doing a quick 5-minute Google search after this presentation and learning about journal therapy. I write in a journal every day just about some of the goals that I've reached for the day, some of the accomplishments that I've made. And it's really great to just self-reflect on those at least once a week. I usually do, just to give you a little sense of the things that you were able to accomplish and what's potentially coming up ahead. Physical activity. When COVID-19 began, I bought a walk-in treadmill for my apartment. Having an 800 square foot apartment, I was like, where am I going to fit this? But I can't tell you, I have been walking 30 minutes a day since I was a freshman at Seton Hall University, all the way to graduating with my doctorate in educational technology leadership from New Jersey State University. And those 30 minutes truly have been indicated to have benefits in terms of short-term and long-term retention for not only those with disabilities, but everyone. In addition to that, finding support networks, because again, you can't, regardless if you have a disability or not, any challenge you're going through in your life, it's really important that you understand that there may be individuals who are in similar circumstances and trying to build on your village. And then finally, sharing your story, because I never really understood that my voice could make an impact on others. And now today I receive 200 messages a week from parents, educators, therapists in our community, simply wanting advice on how I was able to go from point A to point B in my life. And I get the opportunity to provide my services in the hopes of making a better day for all those impacted by disabilities in our community. So I like to end off my presentations by saying that autism hasn't defined me. And as that person who was told that he would be lucky to graduate from high school, to come and speak in front of all you today as a doctoral graduate, receiving my EDD, that there is a lot of potential in our community, and hopefully we can help these individuals live the best quality of life possible. So I say autism can't define me, and I define autism. And I can only hope each and every single one of you can go out there, define your lives and your journeys in the way that you best see it every single day. Thank you all so much for having me here today. This is the way that you can get the PowerPoint slide notes, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have at this time. Thanks again.
Thank you, Kerry. That was very enjoyable and very interesting. And I have a question. Do you think we should train like the airlines and then transportation businesses a lot better for people who have autism? I mean, a lot of people on airlines who have children who are autistic, when they do have, when they get upset, get thrown off immediately off a plane because they couldn't tolerate that. You think they should be trained better in dealing with those kind of situations?
Yeah, so I have the opportunity to serve on a continuing education group called IBCCES, who do certified autism trainings within our community where they actually train employees on how to be more autism and disability friendly. And I think I know which conversation you're talking about. There was a 4-year-old boy who was on a Southwest Airlines flight who they were able to go to Texas. And then once they got to Texas, they weren't able to get back on the plane because the individual refused to wear a mask. And even though they had a medical note, that did not matter to the airline because they had a no tolerance policy. Now, I think as a society, we need to do a better job of educating. That's why during October, I go into many businesses and I talk about inclusion practices, not only for those who are part of airlines and travel organizations, but also theme parks and places where these individuals may be in public where we can do the best to accommodate them so they can just enjoy themselves just like anyone else. So I think we need to do a better job overall if we really want to embrace this word that we talk about so often in our community called inclusion.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Kerry? You just raise your hand. Or Sue has a question.
I do. Hi, Kerry. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
I have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We have lots of time.
Okay, so I know you actually provided, I believe, at least 86 scholarships for students, which is so amazing. I just want to commend you on that. But I want to know like what kind of feedback you've been hearing from the students. Have any of them reached out or their families or anything like that?
So I actually still am in contact with many of our winners. I had one of our winners was actually my intern for the spring. So it was kind of a full circle moment, being able to say how far she came. Several of our first winners have graduated from college and found full-time employment opportunities. I know a young man named Jeremiah Swisher. He graduated in 4 years from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and now is working in government affairs in Wisconsin. And he's just doing incredible work. So it's truly amazing. Our next step, hopefully this fall, is to release a book based on all of our scholarship winners and all of our applicants, because as part of the scholarship application, which the deadline for a spring scholarship is April 26th of this year, is the opportunity for them to write a 500-word essay on their journey growing up with autism. So we're going to compile all those into a book that 100% of the proceeds are going to go directly back to the scholarship fund. So we could hopefully make it sustainable and allow us to give out so many more scholarships for years to come.
That's fantastic. That's so great to hear. So my second question involves libraries and public libraries more specifically. Just on the top of your head, is there anything that you can think of that we can do to be better, to be a little bit more accommodating?
Well, there's definitely a huge advocacy movement right now towards more focus on quiet and sensory rooms. Obviously, some of the libraries that have kind of brought that up too already are thinking to themselves, libraries are already typically a quiet place to begin with. However, having just an area where an individual who might be a little bit stressed, if there's a lot of people, especially once we go back to normal and there's some potential that the library might get a little filled, having just a separate room, which would be full of different sensory toys. You could kind of go half and half on it, an area which is focused on sensory toys, and then just another area that's just focused on giving individuals a place to just self-regulate themselves. That's usually something I recommend right off the bat. And then secondly, definitely consider going about certified training your employees on how to potentially work with individuals who have autism. The firm that I work with have certified autism center accreditations, where they not only train the employees, but they also do these amazing things such as a sensory chart, where on different areas, they'll come to your library and they'll do a public assessment on what sensory challenges individuals with sensory processing or autism may have at different areas of your area. For example, where they enter, there might be a number 5 on a 5-point scale because there might be a lot of foot traffic, there might be a lot of noise. But then when you actually get into the library and you're a little bit more in a quiet area, that might go down to 1 to 2. And depending on the lights and the noise, that might even be lower than that. So those are just 2 ideas right off the bat that I see a lot more, not only libraries, but also places of worship and other public groups trying to do today.
Okay, and that leads me to workspace now. So I'm sure most of those that you have mentioned can also be used in, in a workspace. So what is an exceptional workspace in your opinion?
Ooh, that's
Exceptional or accommodating. What should companies include now when hiring, employees with just, certain disabilities, autism, whatever it may be? What are some things across the board companies should consider now, including in the environment, in the workspace?
well, the first thing is just establishing online and offline literature that simply states their mission towards diversity overall, because it's not only focused on how to accommodate for those with disabilities, but it's also how to accommodate those of diversity in general, because disability falls in line with diversity practices in the workplace. Although overall, the Department of Labor has kind of indicated that disabilities kind of fall behind in most workplaces when it comes to different areas such as sexual orientation, people of color. So it's really, really important that we don't forget those with disabilities. We establish on, for example, our websites that we're hiring people, such as Monster and Glassdoor, that we have a history of hiring people with disabilities in the workplace, to show a little bit of goodwill, but also at the same time to show your outstanding emphasis on diversity overall. And then once that employee actually receives the job, it's important to continue offering professional development opportunities that are focused on disability, which is not only April for World Autism Month, but Mental Health Awareness Month, National Disability Awareness Month in October. These are just the bare minimum things that anyone could do, especially a human resource department can do, to really make a difference for those with disabilities and just to be more diverse overall.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, so great questions, by the way.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? Does Miss Jennifer Atkins, who works for NJCU, have any questions?
She's not allowed to ask any questions. Kidding. She's amazing.
I have no questions. It's just so nice to see 2 wonderful NJCU alum, Joe Donnelly and Kerry Magro, working together. Very exciting to see. And as always, Kerry, your presentations are just thoughtful. They are articulate, and they are full of information that is helpful to all of us, those who are advocates for persons with disabilities in higher ed and in every every industry. So thank you for your good work, and great to see you both.
You're welcome.
Oh, good to see you, Joe. Really great to see you.
Now, Kerry, I have Stephen Short coming on at the end of April. If you want me to send you the Zoom link for that.
Oh, wonderful. Stephen is obviously from the book, but also he's
Mhm.
just a dear friend in the community. How were you able to get in contact with them? That's wonderful.
Robert J. Bernstein, who's another autism advocate,
Great.
introduced me to him, and I talked to him in December. And he's gonna be discussing the 4 A's in autism, and that program is towards the end of April.
I love that presentation. You will have a wonderful time hearing it.
Now I have another program tomorrow with Robert J. Bernstein. If you want to attend, and that's at 1. But I know you're a very busy person during this time of the month, for April, for
Yes,
Autism Alliance Month.
Yes, I have a lunch and learn with UKG. Otherwise, I would be there.
Now I have a big program, and I'm bragging. I'm hosting an author chat with former Hudson County resident and former CIA director John Brennan on April 20th at 1 p.m. We're going to discuss his book, Undaunted. You're more than welcome to join.
Yes, I love him too. I met him several years ago in not Des Moines, Iowa, somewhere in Iowa. I'm terrible at geography, but yes, he's great too.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Any of my other coworkers, like Jessica Campbell or Allie Bloomfield, do you have any questions?
I have one more, Joe, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem.
I'd like to know what's next for Kerry for 2021, 2022.
Well, I was going to say herd immunity. I mean, but I think that's what everyone wants at this point. But no, I mean, hopefully, no. So I think the biggest thing is to come out with our college book, which we're going to call "Living with Autism: Stories You Need to Hear." So hopefully that will be out in the fall. And then looking at next year, so many of the projects that I'm currently working on in the entertainment industry will be going back to production in the summer of 2021. So hopefully I'll be able to have a few more updates on what that looks like, with also a potential project on Broadway, and seeing the Broadway impact now that we're kind of getting back into it a little bit. Is really exciting as well. So those are some of the first things that I'm looking forward to, especially for the next 12 to 18 months at least.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, good luck with everything. It sounds exciting.
So the big word, so it's advocate, advocate, advocate. Teach the world of autism, learning disabilities, and get everybody to understand what is going on in the world with people who learn difference, like that. So advocate, advocate, advocate. Correct?
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. And Stephen will give you a great understanding of some of the stuff we were talking today. His 4 A's are kind of a mantra in my head at all times, about appreciation, acceptance, and everything else he kind of portrays in his presentations. So.
Okay, that is it for the day. And thank you very much. And I'm gonna send you an email after this is over. And thank you very much. And you have a nice day, and I hope to see you soon. And thank you for everything. Thank you for telling us about what you do, and getting the word out about autism and learning disabilities and everything else.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants the PowerPoint slide notes, again, I believe I left them in the chat box, but you could also grab this link right here on the top. And have a great rest of the day, everyone, and hopefully talk to everyone soon.